All right. The research used a quantitative cross-sectional survey design to determine whether there were relationships between IT operations alignment and the 6 underlying dimensions of alignment maturity among K through 12 institutions. The utilization of the quantitative cross-sectional survey design was consistent with previous research studies that have advanced knowledge in this area, including Ford et al. And Sullivan et al. Okay, I'm going to talk about that in another paragraph where you talk about the consistency of the design in the research. Okay, so other research studies have used this design as well. Okay, but this person actually captured it in their first paragraph, which is more of an introduction. So that's what they did. They used the first paragraph to state what the design was, both the quantitative method and the actual design, the cross-sectional survey design. And then they talked about that is consistent with other research that was done in this area. All right. So this is the paragraph here that we're referring to in paragraph 1. The quantitative methodology was appropriate for this study for a few reasons. First, the quantitative methodologies are used to assess relationships between numeric variables using statistical analysis, right? So you state the research method and then you define a characteristic. So that's one characteristic. In the current study, the aim was to determine if there was a significant relationship between IT operation alignment scores and the scores on the 6 dimensions of alignment maturity. So then they listed one characteristic and then they went on to indicate how that characteristic was aligned with the research objectives. Okay, so that was the formula. All right. Therefore, the quantitative research design was the only design that could answer this question in a statistically significant manner. So they said, okay, characteristic of the design, characteristic of my study. Number 3, therefore, this design was appropriate. Okay. Then they went on to the second characteristic. Quantitative methodologies use large samples that are randomly generated so that the results of the sample analyses can be generalized back to the population. Characteristic of the design. The current study randomly sampled respondents from populations so that the results could be generalized back to the population. Characteristic of the design, characteristic of the study. Therefore, the quantitative methodology was more suitable than the qualitative methodology, as the latter does not use quantitative data and results cannot be generalized to the population. So what they did is they included both why the qualitative design was not appropriate, right? So they talked about the quantitative, projectable back to the population, and then the final thing they talked about was indicate why your chosen research method was better than the alternative. So they said here, therefore, the quantitative methodology was more suitable than the qualitative methodology, as the latter does not use quantitative data and results cannot be generalized to the population. And then they gave a reference. Okay, it's important to, when you're writing these things, to give your reference. All right, so that is the first paragraph. The first paragraph focused on the methodology, which is either quantitative or qualitative. Some people use mixed methodology. I do not recommend that because it's just going to take too much time, and it's just, you're trying to graduate and save money. You're not trying to save the world. Leave mixed methodologies alone. Focus on one, qual or quant. All right. So as a summary, state the research method, define the characteristics of the research method, define how the characteristics of the research method are aligned with the characteristics of your research study, and then finally indicate why the particular research method was better than the alternative. Okay, and I just gave you an example of this paragraph right here. So now we're going to go on to the second paragraph, but that's going to be the next video because again, we do things in small chunks. All right. Okay. Let's move on.